welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing the book by Orson Scott Card, Shadows in Flight. I think it's number 5 out of 14 in the Ender's Saga, which started off with Ender's Game, which a lot of people may be familiar with because it was a very popular science fiction novel, the first 3 in the series, and also because it was made into a movie starring Harrison Ford. So, as always, I'm going to start off telling you who I think the audience is appropriate for and what I thought of the book, and then I'll move into a spoiler review, so we'll get to that point here in just a second. So it's a pretty simple story. It's appropriate for all ages. There's nothing in there that's going to embarrass you, so if you're looking for a book for your younger kids who you're just trying to get them to read and they like science fiction, great book for them to pick up. It's a fun read, it's nothing too deep or serious, and you can read it very quickly. There aren't a lot of dense paragraphs in it. So it's a good weekend book, a trip on a train or going through an airport type of book. Okay, so now let's get into the meat of the book, and so I'm going to give you this little spoilers warning. The story is basically about Bean, who's one of the major characters from Ender's Game, and he has fled Earth on a ship traveling at near light speeds. And the reason he's done this is because he's a gene-engineered child and he's exceedingly intelligent. But part of the problem with the gene engineering that they did on him is they gave him gigantism and he is dying. In and of itself, that's tragic enough, but it turns out that he has 3 children that are around 5 or 6 years old that had the same problem. So they're brilliant kids, but he knows that they're going to suffer from gigantism and die at around the age 23, 24, 25, something like that. So what he's decided to do is he'd travel on the ship at near light speed, and he would let relativity and time be his, what do you call it, his partner. Anyway, so as time on Earth travels through 4 or 5 generations of scientists who he's paying to try to solve this disease for him, for his kids. He's traveling at near light speed, and therefore his time is slower. Anyway, that's the idea, relative time. However, they have not solved the genetic issue back on Earth, and he knows that he's dying, so something has to give. That's the basic plot for the story. Now, what happens is that they find a apparently derelict, multi-generational Formic colony ship. So the Formic race was the race that they were fighting in Ender's Game, which at the end of that initial 3 series, in theory we had killed all of them off, and Ender Wiggins had taken the lone survivor somewhere off into space to do whatever he was going to do with them. This novel, here's a pretty slow story in that I think that the arrival of the Formic ship, it really forces the decision. So that is what we would call the inciting incident. Something has to change at that point. But that doesn't happen until 2/3 of the way through the novel. So for the first 2/3 of the novel, it's a very slow, character-driven build type of story. And then because you only have 1/3 of the novel after the inciting incident, it wraps up very quickly and doesn't actually solve the issues. But I think that's done on purpose because, again, the Ender Saga makes a lot of money for Orson Scott Card, so I think he's probably setting up another novel about these 3 kids and how they survive on an alien world. But that means that this novel in and of itself is a standalone piece. It does not really end holistically, and you might go, ah. So it's still a good book, just don't expect it to be a mind-blowing type of science fiction novel. So the things that interested me about this book, now I've only read the first 3 or 4 or the original 3 Ender's Game Ender Saga novel. Apparently this is number 5, but it's listed in this book jacket as number 14 out of like 15. interesting things for me is that it backs away from xenocide, so we're supposed to have killed the entire alien race, and this says no, you didn't. There's these long generational colony ships floating around out there, and I wonder if that's just guilt that Card feels having killed off an entire race. It also backs away from this idea that the Formics they're kind of just bugs. And he says, no, really, it's not that they're bugs, they're a slave race. And what the Queen does is you're an individual until the Queen looks at you and overcomes you with psychic powers, and then you just become a slave and do whatever the Queen wants. And that seems to be a change that I'm not sure that I like in this novel. It does suggest that there's a possibility for reconciliation between humans and the Formic race. Because now that you know that there's more of them out there, why not? And of course, one of the themes that runs through this whole book is the dangers of gene engineering, kind of like that Frankensteinian thing. You produce something through science and then some unintended consequence happens, which in this case is gigantism and these kids having very short lives. But those themes aren't really explored in that theme in terms of if it's right or wrong, good or bad. It's just kind of laid out there. So like I said, it's a nice little science fiction novel. It's not Card's best work. It's stretched a little bit in that the 2/3 of the novel happened before the inciting incident, and that, but it is still a fun traditional science fiction story. There's no real dense paragraphs in it, so you can read it fairly quickly, and it is entertaining. So, taken for what it was, do I recommend this book, Shadows in Flight, Orson Scott Card? Sure I do. And with all that said, I will see you all next time.